Who's voiding my maneuverability John theory? This is WarThunder, and this is ENERD-vision. This is what I'm going to call Gaijin's version of TAC view. It means that we can highlight some planes, we can look at the speeds, we can look at some of the information. Now this looks like a professional game. We can do the whole entire History Channel dogfights routine at this point, and this also opens the window to make very, very terrible videos that are completely misinforming anyone that actually views them, which is, this does open a whole can of worms. I'm excited to see this. I've already seen, like, one video where the guy, like, he flies the Gripen, and he's like, I'm gonna do this, and he's like, reverses his turn, like, 16 times in front of the guy's guns, flies through the Vulcan, and then, like, still gets the kill because he's in a Gripen. But we're gonna try to not do that. We're gonna try to have, like, a semi-intelligent conversation over some Belgian triplet beer, and because I'm drinking it's basically a French beer, because Belgium is basically France, or the gateway to invading France anyways. We're flying the Mirage 2000 again, and practicing our duelio skills against we got Yule Fabulous Femboy in the F-16A, and I think we got Slingy Dust in the F-15, and this is just to talk a little bit about my top tier dogfights, and like a thing that Gaijin did good, and also talk a little bit about, like, I don't know, old Johnny Boyd, because Johnny Boyd gets shit on for being in the fighter mafia, which, I mean, he should. Like, the guy kind of overall, his contribution to history is he made energy maneuverability theory, which was all well and good and was actually useful, and the Air Force uses it, and it allowed the Air Force to like, design better fighters, and like articulated ways to evaluate how well things turn. And then the guy kind of jumped the shark and kind of just decided that fighters shouldn't have missiles and radar, and that missiles and radar were a static thing that was not going to improve with history. Now, obviously, in the backdrop of I don't know, dead fucking 30 years, the dude's been probably dead for over 10. Kind of seeing that the modern world is more about the missile slinging and less about the shooty shoot. But in the WarThunder game, we really do enjoy the shooty shoot, because, I mean, in all honesty, I can show half a dozen games like, okay, cool, I flew in, and then I shot a missile from the side, and then the guy, like, explodes like 10 seconds later. That's kind of like most of what top tier gameplay is. At the same time, there are people who are like, oh, WarThunder is not a good simulation, and I would beg to differ. I'm not going to say that it's a good simulation, because pilot G limits are different, and like the way that planes fly is different, but overall, in the context of it being a video game, you can actually use a lot of the core ideas of energy maneuverability theory and all that actual nerd shit to give you an advantage. Now, does the nerd shit actually matter? I want it to matter. I think it's cool. I think the nerd shit is fun to think about. I think it's fun to articulate around about it. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the mechanical skills, if you don't have the desire to practice, all of the nerd shit just, like, doesn't matter as much. And there's a lot of people within the WarThunder community, and a lot of people within, like, even the DCS community, that will tell you exactly how to win a dogfight in theory, and they're going to play it play by play. It's going to be like linguistic tic-tac-toe, and a lot of the times it doesn't really work out the way that you think it is, because if you take the EM diagrams of the F-16, you take the EM diagrams of the F-15, if they exist. I don't know that there's actually a public one for the F-15. I think I've seen one floating around the internet. And you take the EM diagrams for the Mirage 2000, which I do know actually exist. You might conclude that you should fight the Mirage 2000 in a very specific way, and this is the way that you should default to. But the reality is, to fight that way, to do the energy maneuverability theory to its max, is a lot harder than you think it is, because the way that energy maneuverability works, and the way that the theory kind of premises itself, is basically the fighter that manages its energy, quote-unquote, better, the fighter that has more specific excess power, the fighter that is, like, better at pointing its nose, in some situations will win more often than not. And even the paper itself is actually pretty open-ended about it. Like, it's like, yeah, actually, there's moves, there's counter moves, and there's, like, a bunch of things. Like, a lot of the actual paper is you know, common sense shit that fighter pilots were already doing, but it like codifies it into math into a way that can not necessarily be relatable to like, you know, normal people like me, but it can be relatable to like, I don't know, fucking insufferable nerds, and that's pretty cool. With that being said, the way that the F-16 is modeled in WarThunder and the way the Mirage 2000 is modeled in WarThunder, they are more or less correct as long as they're flown within like the damping mode. When you disable the damping mode, you can do more AOA than you normally can in both planes. You can do better initial turn rates. You can do a lot of funky shit. Now, by the way, if 5 minutes 30 seconds into the video and you don't realize, all of this background footage, this is from Sim, by the way. These are Sim duels. So if you're an RB player and like, I would have hit that shot, yeah, you would have, because it's RB. It's a lot easier to aim because we got dicks on sticks instead of you know, the mouse aim stuff. And like, I do both. I enjoy both. And you're not like a shitty person for playing RB or a shitty person for playing SB. Like, you're a shitty person for playing WarThunder. But the way that these fights usually match up is basically the F-16 can win, and the Mirage 2000 can win, and it really depends on who plays their trajectory better, who plays their energy state a little bit better. But it also means, because these planes are like diametrically opposed in some ways, where the Mirage 2000 is a lot better at lower speed, it's a lot better at initial turns, so it's kind of like not so good at the energy retention thing, and the F-16 is really good at the energy retention thing. It's really good at sustained turns, but its initial turn is where it bleeds a lot more energy than the Mirage 2000. It means that you're always doing this kind of push and pull sequence. This is where sometimes when you merge in the Mirage 2000, I might try to conserve my energy because I'm expecting the guy in the F-16 is going to try to play to that strength. And if I shit all my energy away right away, I end up in front of guns. On the other hand, if the F-16 knows that I'm going to try to play against his thing by trying to do some of his thing, he might do some of my thing. He might decide to, like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to guerrilla pull as hard as I can, and because I know you're going to try to conserve energy, and I know that you have to, I'm going to just try to shoot you right off the bat, and then play it out from there. And I think if John Boyd was alive, he'd be like, this is actually an example of, like, you're closing the OODA loop. Oh my god, it's so fucking intelligent and smart. But in reality, a lot of this shit's just monkey see, monkey do. You practice it, and you're like, I want to fucking kill this guy, and then you just go and do that. And that's kind of like the attitude I try to imbibe upon all the, you know, morons that watch my channel, all the people that are casuals, is like, if you're trying to be good at WarThunder, the way to be good at WarThunder is to play WarThunder. It's not to go into YouTube videos or watch a 6-hour seminar on Art of the Kill and all the theoretical stuff, because the theoretical stuff, like, is nice. It's nice to have. It's nice to discuss. I like that it exists. It is an interesting topic of conversation. It is also, there's a lot of gray area. And even lately, even kind of like digging into it, digging into the history and digging into, you know, the recent real life lore, it turns out that there are problems with energy maneuverability theory. Those problems are kind of like the existence of missiles and the existence of like bleed rates, and the EM diagrams don't necessarily articulate as well as you would like to, of like, oh, who wins in this situation? How should you play this? There is kind of new research out there about, I think they call it like combat cycle times, which is, it's more or less like common sense stuff of basically like, if plane A can turn 180 degrees faster than plane B, even if one of them looks bad on an EM diagram, the guy that can turn 180 degrees faster can probably shoot a missile first, and that will give him a decisive advantage. At the same time, in the context of like the F-16, the F-16 is, in real life, is limited in AOA, and is really good at doing rates, and it's really good at being fast and going around the circle. It's also like pretty decent at high AOA stuff compared to like stuff made before it, but in comparison to more modern fighters, like that 26 degree AOA limit means that it can get into a position where the guy wants to pull harder and he's slow and he has the ability to move the nose, but the AOA limiter just won't let him do it. So it means that the way that he has to play it out in real life is going to be kind of different than it would be in the video game, because in the video game you just disable the fucking thing and like pull 40 and the plane doesn't care, because the video game has physics that don't exist. The game can just basically say gravity is not real, that wing stalls are not real. Until you reach 47 degrees AOA, you don't stall. Like that, it can be hard coded. In real life, you can't really do that. Like physics is physics. That's why the F-16 has like a limiter in real life, and in War Thunder like kind of duplicates it. But like, there's also like shortages in the way they model things too. Because let's be honest, the game started as a mid 2000s flight simulator on computers, and was ported over to Xbox, and then was ported over to PC, and then it was turned into a free-to-play game, and it was really designed around kind of replicating like World War II stuff, and all the underlying physics calculations and all this stuff. It's kind of like when War Thunder makes a flight model, they're making a flight model out of like potatoes. So yeah, you can get it to shape the same way, you might be able to get it to work, but the way that you get there is really just fucking like doesn't make sense to any kind of like physical sense. Like you can't just take a thrust drag curve or a lift to drag curve from War Thunder and be like, yes, this is what it is in real life. Because like the way things are modeled, they're fudging some shit. Do they get it close at the end of the day? Yeah, most of the way, yes. If you look at the pilot anecdotes and then the way that shit matches up in War Thunder, you can generally do a lot of the same things. There are some exceptions. There are some gray areas. Like the F-16, disabling the AOA limiter is like a perfect example. Like if a guy's really good at disabling that fucking thing, and then just ripping his nose across the circle and like just pulling into you, that's something an F-16 in real life couldn't do. At the same time, though, when kind of like flown within, the flight envelopes that exist in real life, it's more or less fine, and more or less the same kind of tactics, strategies, attacks, counterattacks, all that other crap, more or less works. And that's in spite of like the G limits being different, because like a lot of this stuff is not nerd shit. A lot of this stuff is reflex. A lot of stuff is, I see something, I'm doing it, I'm going to do it now. This is why like when you fight people that are better, fight people that are harder, a lot of the times it doesn't feel like it matters what plane they're in, because they see the attack first, they take it first, their window that they give you for a counterattack is really small, and you can feel like you're just getting fucked, which is pretty cool. Like, I like that aspect. I like the aspect of the game that you can just go out and brute force your way into being good and learn things like in a way that's just completely kind of like organic, as opposed to really having to study for it, because like you have infinity chances to just keep repeating the same thing over and over. Like, we basically have infinity chances to get it right, and we can play on some margins that like people in real life just couldn't do. Like all the head-on bullshit, all the like super close range shit that like you do in War Thunder, you fuck it up in real life, you just die. Like, you die for good. You do not come back. You do not respawn. You do not pay your repair costs. You just die. But because we're in a simulation, or in a pseudo-simulation, because I know some fucking simulators like, actually, blah, 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 like, nerd, shut up, go to the bathroom, fucking give them a swirly. But because it's War Thunder, we can train some aspects harder. We can take the thing to its logical conclusion. I'm not saying that, oh yeah, we're actually better than Air Force pilots, but that's stupid. Because, being a pilot's hard. Playing War Thunder, this is a video game. This is like, relatively speaking, easy. But we can dedicate a lot of time to this, and we can kind of learn some things about real life and reflect upon them. We can also take some real life things and apply them to a video game, which I think is like pretty neat. With that being said, the thing with EM theory and the thing with energy maneuverability is there are other things that do change. And one of the biggest changes, I think, especially in the 21st century, is basically high-off bore sight missiles. Basically, missiles have gotten to the point where they are good, and it means that things like the F-16, if it plays to its optimal energy maneuverability theory thing, because the way the F-16 works is it can do the rate thing, and then it can do the uppies thing really well. The Mirage 2000 can't really do the uppies. It's got the low wing loading, so it doesn't do the uppies. It doesn't have the thrust to weight, but if it is competitive enough in the uppies, it does start to win when it turns into the downies. When you go into the downslope, the old barber pole, whatever the shit, you can win. At the same time, because the F-16 has to go pretty fast to be in the rate range and do the uppies, if you have the high off-bore sight missile stuff, it's very likely that he flies into an aspect that he can't deal with. And it means that basically, because he's jamming Mawez, he has to play in a speed range, or at least partially play in a speed range that is not nearly as suitable to him. And I think this is why, in large part, you see that kind of like more modern fighters are not necessarily focused on outright energy retention. I think the change between what the emphasis is between like the 1970s and now is going to be more biased towards initial turn rates and getting nose on faster, getting your missile off quicker than it is winning a pure gunfight or a pure like rear aspect missile shot, because you don't need as much space anymore. And you don't need that fine control, and just going up when the other guy can't go up still means that you potentially kill yourself. And as WarThunder advances, as the missiles get better, as they add more shit, because initially this video talked about like this is dev server footage and this is like the Magic 2 with the, like featuring real magic. It means that normally when I fight the F-16, when I fight Messer in it, because in all honesty, the old fanboy, old Messer, he's pretty damn fucking good. Like I've seen him fight basically the Korean guy who I consider to be like the best jet dueler in the game. And I've seen him fight Shezarate, who I consider to be also the best top tier F-16 jet dueler in the game. And like, yes, there's probably someone hidden out there that can defeat them and blah. But on par, on average, I think both of those guys are the best. I've seen Messer go toe to toe with him and do like just fine. Like it's a really balanced fight. So I don't feel bad about using Messer as an example of like an F-16 guy doing the uppies good and doing the uppies at the right time, because like the dude's legitimately good. But I think as the game changes, and I think as more and more bullshit gets added, and depending on how it's modeled, there are planes that are maybe not as good as you think they are right now, that in the future might be a lot better. At the same time, as the game progresses, if they keep the 16v16 thing, and things continue the way they are, and the missiles are kind of like as flare resistant or more flare resistant than they are, I think dogfights are going to be not really important. Like I would argue right now in EC, dogfighting is a thing you do for fun. It is not a thing you do to have a high KD ratio. Like in all honesty, like you're gonna play EC, like fly around, shoot your 9M, flare the fuck out of the Griffin or whatever, spin around, and then fly the fuck away. At the same time, that's boring. I don't want to do that. I want to kill people with guns. I think it's cool, and I'm going to fucking continue to do it. And I'm going to continue to do it in planes that are overpowered like the Griffin, because use it to kill other Griffins. Fuck them. But I'll also continue to do it in things like the Mirage 2000, at least at top tier anyways, because like I like the way this plane flies. I like the interesting juxtaposition of managing energy versus other players that this thing provides. And now with the new Magics with Magics, you can actually probably force some bullshit upon people, and I think that's pretty interesting. Anyways, that's my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed 18 minutes of me ranting. I'm gonna go get another beer.